Welcome to Allies or Enemies. I'm Jess.
And I am Shawn. This is part 8 of our top 100 favorite board games of all time. And today we are counting down from 30 to 21.
And it is important to note, these are our favorite games. We're not saying these are the top 100 best design games, but the top 100 games we really like playing.
Yeah, I wish that there was an objective rating system outside of like the BGG like top 100, but like a baseball number crunching way to find this out. I'll honestly really enjoy that. But for now, it's just based on our favorites.
And each video we switch up who kicks things off. So it is over to me to start with my number 30. My number 30 is Clank Legacy. And Clank is a great deck builder that you're going down into the caverns and you're trying to gather as much stuff and then come back up before you get killed by a dragon, basically. Mm-hmm. And the Legacy version was so much fun to play. It put a really interesting, very competitive game and made it almost semi-co-op because we tried to complete all of like the little missions we were given as well. But even though we played the Legacy a while ago, it still plays really well post-Legacy, which is something I really enjoy about it.
Yeah, a lot of games claim that, like, a fully playable game after, and we never play them after. This one we honestly have, and we've used the cards to play some of the regular Clank side maps. But it is cool that in the two-player, I think partly because we played two-player, we wanted to make sure we opened everything. So it was really fun that it became a like, okay, first we got to go to this castle and then we race out of the dungeon. And there was a little bit of backstabbing in that, but mostly we held on to those deals too.
And it is fun that you get to add cards as well. And so now even when we play it regular, there are certain favorite cards that kind of still come up and remind us about the Legacy experience.
Yeah, Dewey is still, it's our best card.
And that is my number 30.
My number 30 is Near and Far. And the one you just had actually maybe was my favorite narrative experience, even though it's super short snippets. But this one probably is a very close second. And the storylines work really well in this. But even without that part, and sometimes we'll just play with just the cards that have no story at all and just give you kind of the adventure benefits. It still works so well. And it's cool that there's kind of the two, or with Amber Mines, 3 parts of the game where you've got the town, you've got the mines, and Amber Mines is great. It really adds a lot. And then you've got the really fun part, which is the adventure and moving around the village and having the little adventures and putting down your tents and all of that stuff. And all of that together, it sounds like a lot, but it actually moves weirdly fast too.
I would say it probably moves a bit too fast because the game ends based on when you've put out a certain number of tents. And so it very quickly, I've put out all of mine. And you're like, what? But there's so many more things I wanted to do.
Yeah, I think that really says a lot about the game because it's still over an hour every time. And every single time, I'm like, Jess, no, don't end it yet. I want to do more things. So that speaks well of it for sure. And that is my number 30.
My number 29 is Ultimate Railroads. And so you were always keen to kind of try Russian railroads, but I thought it was going to be really a train game. And this isn't that. It really is it's a worker placement game. There's different tracks that you can try and advance, and there's different types of tracks that you then try and advance. And so it's just a really clever way of abstracting building a railroad that doesn't even have to have that theme.
Yeah, it's super abstracted. It could be just about anything, but it works well with railroads. Like, I get it and I kind of feel it, but I fell in love with this game. We got this, and I'm constantly like, Jess, we got to play again. We got to play all of the boards. We got to play all of the boards with the coal thing. We got to do, and I'm just in love with this.
Yeah, the great thing about the box is it does make you want to try all of the different expansions and things that have all been combined in it. And then even each one, I want to keep trying again and try a different strategy. Like, I just feel like there's so many different paths that you could do so well in. Mm-hmm. And that's my number 29.
My number 29 is Paladins of the West Kingdom. And this is a pretty heavy game. The West Kingdom games mostly are medium-ish. Viscounts is a bit heavier, but this is definitely the heaviest. And this is really a game where you're building up kind of your resource system. So you've got workers, you put out your workers, and you're really building to these like satisfying turns. It's very heads down, where you're playing workers and then you're getting workers and then you're like gaining cards, and those cards are giving you workers, and you're putting out other workers, and it's really you're putting stuff on stuff, and you're getting other stuff kind of game. Very Euro-y, and I love it. I love that kind of thing.
And it is really interesting because all of the things you're getting tend to get you to focus on one path more than another, but they're all interconnected. So very quickly that you find you have to then start focusing somewhere else to get that high enough to get back to what you were doing before, which is quite interesting.
Yeah, you got to do a little red and a little blue and a little black and a little of this thing. And it is an interesting brain-burning experience. And that is my 29.
My number 28 is Marvel United. And I love cooperative games, and this is such a nice, light cooperative game. Turns are super quick. On your turn, you just put down a card, and you just do the actions on that card. And it's really simple. But there is enough to it, and I think it helps that for the X-Men Pledge, we did get kind of a lot of stuff. Because then it makes it really fun to keep trying a new bad guy, to keep trying a new hero. And they have some really cool ones in this one where some of the bad guys are also heroes as well. So it really gives you some opportunity to like first play against them and then play with them, which is really fun.
Yeah, we actually played this like last night and had a really fun game against Onslaught. It was Gambit and Dupe versus Onslaught. And it came down to like the last card. And it does that quite a bit for us. Like it looks like a kid's game. And it is to a point, and it can be, but it can also be a challenging-ish co-op game.
Yeah, depending on the villain, because the villains make quite a bit of a difference. That it can be hard, and it's nice to have that cooperative experience. That even if it is tough, it still only is about kind of 20 minutes, but it's been a fun little adventure. And that is my number 28.
My number 28 is Architects of the West Kingdom, and I went back. This was down to the wire whether I was going to put Architects or Paladins in the front, and then I just realized we have played this so much more than any of the other Shem Phillips games. This is by far our most played, and partly that's because it's a little bit lighter, it's a little bit quicker, it works a little bit better with more players, but it's also just like it's immediately fun and interesting, and it's got this really cool mechanic where you're putting down dudes, and the more dudes on a thing, the more of whatever that resource, trees or rocks or whatever you get. But at any time, you can just take those guys, you can go to the town hall, and you can take those guys and you can put them in jail. So once you get too many people on a space, someone's going to put you in jail. And that's a really fun mechanic, because then you got to go break them out of jail and to get your guys back again. And it's a really fun, almost take that, but it doesn't feel like take that.
Yeah, it is interesting, particularly at 2 players, because for 2 players, it is down to me to catch you. But I also have other priorities that I want to do. So it is this interesting balance of like, do I maximize doing what I want to do, or do I stop you from kind of running away with getting tons of one type of resource?
And this does get a bit of a bad rap for 2 players, and it is honestly better with more, but we've had a lot of fun with this at 2 players too. Like, it still does work. And that is my 28.
My number 27 is Cartographers, and I love the whole flip and write, roll and write genre, and this is a flip and write, and it's a really fantastic one. You are drawing a Tetris shape on your turn, and then there's different terrains, and so depending on the different goals, you're trying to kind of match up the terrains in different ways to score those points. But there's something that's just super calming almost about drawing out those terrains, and we really take our time with it. So I love when I want something that's a little bit more low key, of playing Cartographers and then ending up with this lovely little map at the end.
It is low key ish, but it definitely has ramped up a little bit in the stress levels with the Heroes expansion, because it's got like meaner bad guys as well. And the goblins, whenever the goblins come out too, it's like, oh, you're ruining everything, which is, I guess, what goblins would do in real life. So it works well. I'm also looking forward to, they're doing a bunch of map packs as well, I guess, that are going to change that up as well. And we've played this enough that will be a welcome addition.
That is true. I still enjoy playing like the base game as it is, but just to have a slightly different starting map and slightly different things will be interesting to try out. And that is my number 27.
My number 27 is Parade, and we've talked about this in previous videos too, but this has just become like our favorite card game. This is like our go-to if it's late at night, but we want to play a game, but we don't want to think about it. this is the one that we play every time right now. And it works great at 2, and it works great at more, and it just looks nice too when you lay out the guys in their parade. And it's got this nice, like, once the parade grows long enough, because you got to put a card at the end, and then it's like whatever number that is, you can skip that many in the parade. But once you get to like 10 or 11 cards, you know you're taking something. And then it builds up and builds up, and it's like, you know, you're taking a lot, and the stakes grow, and it gets really fun.
Yeah, it is really interesting, the kind of build up of watching other people on their turns to see what they have to take. And you do keep an eye on them for what suits they're taking, because if you have a lot of one, you want to make sure you have the most. So someone can really mess you up if they tie you for it, because it just you just end up having to take a lot more points then, and points are bad. So it is this fun kind of like, oh no, I thought I was going to be able to flip those kind of moment.
Yeah, no, this is one I'll play anytime. Play it in the pub, play it at the park, whatever. Really like it. And that is my 27.
My number 26 is Hadrian's Wall, and my last game I said I really like Flip and Right, Roll and Rights, and this falls into that Flip and Right genre, but it is not what you would expect typically from that type of game. It is a heavy game, and I feel like it's only a Flip and Right kind of due to the necessity of creating those combinations. It made it, being able to draw it in, the easier way to represent that. But it's super interesting. On your turn, you start off with only so many workers, and then you have to put those workers out. And there's some great combos in terms of, you put this worker out, and that lets you fill in this box, which then lets you get this worker, and then you can put that one over here. And so it's again, very heads down, but super satisfying when you can get combo after combo. And you know you're maybe in trouble if the person opposite you has taken a lot longer on their turn, because they've really made a super efficient kind of use of their workers.
Yeah, this is maybe the comboist game that I've ever played. If you like combos, this is the game. And speaking of combos, this is a combo on this list, because this is also going to be for me a little bit later. So I'll talk about it a little bit in just a minute too.
And that is my number 26.
My number 26 is Gloomhaven. And Gloomhaven we picked up on a trip in Bristol. This is just when we were really getting back into board games. And we went into a store, and I just said, what is your largest box of game? And they said, this is the one. And it had just come out, and I was like, great, I'm taking it. And we fell in love with it, and we played it every night. It was the only thing we thought about. But I haven't really thought about it since we finished. So it was like this terrific, wonderful experience, and I loved it. But after the experience, I love that we had that experience, but it just isn't higher because I haven't wanted to go back to it. And even Jaws of the Lion, it was fine, but it missed that, like, opening up the boxes, and I loved all of that. I loved the, like, oh, who's coming next? Who's coming out of this one? And I'm really looking forward to hopefully recapturing that with Frosthaven as well.
I think that is the key difference between Jaws of the Lion and Gloomhaven, is the ability to try character after character. Because I remember there'd be some evenings, and like one of us would be kind of one mission away from being able to retire, and we weren't going to play another one, but we thought, well, we really want to open up that next box, so let's do it. Let's do this next mission. Let's retire this person and find out who we're going to get. And there was something super exciting about that. Yeah,
there were a lot of tired days the next morning for sure. And that is my 26.
My number 25 is Architects of the West Kingdom. So you already had this on your list. But exactly what you said is, we have played this so many times, and it's been a really slow build for me. Because I think when we first started playing it, we had heard it wasn't that great at 2, and so I wasn't really convinced. And then the more we played it, the more I was like, no, this is great. And then it's been great playing it with friends as well. And then it's the expansions, I think, have just like upped it enough that it's turned it from playing something that we really like playing to something that's kind of a little bit of that extra level. It's not super heavy, but it just gives it that next little bit once you've played it enough to revitalize it.
Yeah, no, I think they do add quite a bit. And also the asymmetric sides of the player sheets, even though it's not like huge differences, it's enough that it feels a little bit different. But for sure now, with the other cards and all the other stuff that we have to think about, It does add that little something that I think it kind of needed right out of the gate. And now that it's in there as well, we're just playing it even more.
And that's my number 25.
My number 25 is Cascadia, and I love tile placement games, and I love games set in nature, and obviously this does both. So this is a really good fit, and it just has this great mechanic, and it's so simple, and I don't know why it's not in a million games before this, but where when you're drafting both an animal and a tile, and you get both things together. And you almost never want both things at the same time, or at least you want one a little bit more. And so it's nice having that thing where you're just kind of making the best of the 4 decisions each time. And you also have each of the animal scores differently, and so you got to be thinking about that too. So whilst it is such a simple game of put down a tile, put down an animal, those other decisions that they've kind of put within that just add enough to it that it really feels like a satisfying puzzle.
Yeah, because as well as the animals is the landscapes that score, so you're always trying to group similar landscapes. And I think it was a really smart decision that most of the tiles have 2 different landscapes. So how you orient that tile really kind of decides how you might want that area to grow or not. And so there's certainly been times when it's kind of like, oh, do I want it to be mountain? Do I want it to be grass? And trying to puzzle that out.
And they did such a good job with the components. For a game with so few components, it's nice that they just went that little bit extra with those wooden discs for the animals too, which makes a nice difference. But that is my 25.
My number 24 is Flamme Rouge, and specifically with the Peloton expansion, because that's what makes it playable with 2 players. And I really enjoy racing games, and this is just such a sleek racing game where you have 2 different bikers, and you're really trying to kind of maximize your movement, but without being the head of the pack. So kind of that interesting decision of when you can sprint ahead and when you want to be more with the group. But I think the reason why it's so high for me is we have the app that lets us do tours.
Yeah.
And it's been so much fun sometimes just set for an evening, spending the whole evening just doing a whole tour, and being able to play it like that has turned it from just playing a one-off game to a whole other experience.
I was thinking about this, and if I would like it as much if it had a different theme or different art. And I'm not sure that I would. I love the style to this. It just has this lovely kind of a little bit old-timey, 70s-ish French feel. It does feel so French, and just their mustaches and all of the little bits and your little player board, totally unnecessary, but so great. All of those touches, I think, really bump it up for me too.
Even having the minis being the cyclists, I think if it was cars instead, which we're so used to seeing, it'd be a bit different. But because it's cyclists, it's a little bit different, which is nice. And that is my number 24.
My number 24 is A Feast for Odin. A Feast for Odin is not a game that immediately clicked with me. In fact, we do a thing where sometimes if we're on the fence about a game, if we want to keep it, we'll put it in the closet, and then we'll see if we go to the closet and get it out and want to play it. And sometimes they go right from there to get sold to somebody. But this one was in there for a little while, and then it just got in my head, I give it another whirl. And it totally clicked. And I think it was just a matter of understanding that it's hard and it takes a while to fill everything, and it's more fun if you go out to the islands early. But it is one of those games where there's a lot to understand. There's an enormous number of worker placement spaces. There's an enormous amount of stuff that you can do where you're hunting or fishing or just building huts or going out to islands or doing all of these different things. And that's what's so great about it, is it's kind of a sandboxy worker placement game, but there is maybe a little bit of work to put into it to really learn it and to kind of learn to love it.
I think one of the things that helped me as well is the Norwegian expansion. And I think part of that is it has this interesting thing where when you're down to your last 1 or 2 workers, there's these kind of super powerful spots that you can do as a final go. And so some rounds when I feel like I haven't accomplished much, it's been really nice to have that last option to kind of get that little bit extra out of my last remaining workers.
Yeah, the Norwegian expansion supercharges the 2-player game. It's necessary for the 2-player game. It works fine at 2 players, but way better with Norwegian expansion. And that is my 24.
My number 23 is Wingspan, which is one of the best-selling modern board games. So I'm sure most people are familiar with it, but I do really enjoy playing it. I have a zoology background, so I do appreciate the birds and then the research that has gone into kind of getting everything as accurate as possible for it. But there is something really satisfying about building that engine and the way you do the actions as you follow your tile through. And then kind of that decision of, do I want that bird that doesn't give me anything but points, but is worth a lot of points, and how to lay it out. And all of those choices I still find really interesting. And I think the New Zealand Australia expansion helped a lot. And for me, the biggest difference is the new player boards that are provided, because I think it evened out some of the strategies a little bit more.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think so for sure. And this one, I've said it before that it does lose me a little bit with the theme because I'm not that into birds. Although I do get excited when I get an Oriole because I'm a huge O's fan from forever. But I saw that someone made a Pokemon version of this, and I just thought, oh, I wish that exists. I would be, oh man, I would be into this as Pokemon. And then that kind of made me realize, okay, I do like the system. I'm just not that into birds.
And you often only choose a bird if it's been a baseball logo, as opposed to whether it's the best card to play.
I do if the Oriole comes out, I'm taking that Oriole.
But this is my number 23.
My number 23 is Hadrian's Wall. And I said earlier when it was on Jess's list that this is the most combo game out there. And you know what? 5 minutes later, I still believe that. This is just... It really is kind of the logical next step in what can happen with a flip and write game, because this takes it to the extreme, and it is such a big flip and write kind of, even though it's just two pieces of paper, there's so much going on in those two pieces of paper. There's corners in there that I have not even explored and that I barely understand, and we've probably played 20 games of this. So that tells you how much is going on in this game, and I love it. I love crunching those combos together.
And it really is an excellent example of multiplayer solitaire, because you are just doing your own thing. You may look up to see what cards the other person has, because maybe you could draw that shape and you'll have to give them a stone to do that. But we love multiplayer solitaire. Yeah. It's something really satisfying about both of us doing the same thing at the same time and kind of not getting in each other's way.
Yeah, people use that as a pejorative, and we often hear that, oh, multiplayer solitaire, tell us more. And if you do like that, if you like just kind of doing your own thing but with other people, this does that really well. And that is my 23.
My number 22 is Welcome to the Moon, and I'm kind of lumping in Welcome to as well. And Welcome to the Moon is a wonderful flip and write. In this, you have 8 totally different maps that all use the same system. So it all uses the same deck of cards, and then kind of 3 different sets come out, and simultaneously you have to pick which one you're going to use. But how you do that and how it all kind of interconnects is very different from map to map. And there is kind of a little bit of a story that kind of progresses you through explaining what each of the different maps mean as well.
Yeah, it's amazing actually, because it's like they've just created 8 totally different flip and write games and then just given them to us in one box. And they did not need to do this many. 4 people would have been like, great, all 4 of these are great. But 8 they overdid it. And I would say 6 of them are excellent. And the other 2 are still fine as well. But it's that there's that many that are that high quality in this box blew me away. This is definitely one I totally dropped the ball on not having on my list.
Yeah, it exceeded my expectations, and that is my number 22.
My number 22 is Scythe, and I will put up the disclaimer right at the top that I actually don't love this game at 2 players. I think it's a little weaker at 2 players, but it's so good at 3 or 4. And the 2-player game is really elevated, I think, as well by Rise of Fenris, which even at 2, we had a lot of fun. And that might be my favorite expansion of all expansions, because it takes an already cool game and then adds a campaign mode to it with a whole bunch of little openable boxes that add little modules you can use later. And it was way beyond my expectations for what that would be, and it really raised Scythe for me as well.
Yeah, and I do enjoy the two-player game because I do find that less things kind of mess you up, and it is about creating an efficient engine. And I just don't like it when people mess with my things. But I think you're right. How it's meant to be, the true Scythe experience really does shine at that more 3-4 player account.
Yeah, Jess likes when no one fights her, and she can just make her little farms over on her side of the board for sure. But that is my 22.
My number 21 is another Stonemaier game, and that is viticulture. What I love about viticulture is it makes logical sense. You can really kind of see the whole process between the worker spaces that you go to and your player board. It's all about the winemaking process. So you have to plant your grapes, and then you have to collect them, and then you've got to turn them into wine, and all of that flows so nicely. And then it was made so much better with the Tuscany expansion, particularly for 2 players. And then even better with Viticulture World, which takes the competitive experience and makes it cooperative.
Yeah, and the only other game I can think of that's done that is Orleans, and we talked about Orleans earlier on the list as well, but I kind of think this does it even better, taking competitive and making it also cooperative, because there are 6 different regions, there's 6 different ways to play, all different challenges, and they're all very challenging challenges.
Yeah, and I love co-op games, so to take a worker placement game I already enjoy and make it cooperative is fantastic. And that's my number 21.
My number 21 is Caverna, and this is my second Uwe Rosenberg game on the list, and this is my favorite Uwe Rosenberg game. There's a few reasons for that. First of all, I like the theme a lot. I love that it's fantasy races, especially with the expansion that adds a bunch of asymmetrical ones. And I like the silliness of some of the rooms, like the cuddle room. I like that it's got like the inside and outside. This is kind of Agricola 2.0, and it really is too, where you've got the farming part, but then you've also got the building your cave, and you've also got these little like dwarf adventures, and just these silly little bits, like how you wish for children when you have kids in it, is really fun. And the feeding is a lot easier than a lot of other Uwe Rosenberg games, and I do appreciate that.
I love the animal meeples because you get all of these great meeples, and then again, some of the meeples have to be outside, but you can keep some of them inside. Like the donkeys can go in the mines, and you can have one pet or animal that sleeps in your bedroom. And so it's super fun to go all in on the animal strategy.
Yeah, and there's a lot of different strategies you can take as well, and a lot of different paths you can go down, and I appreciate that in Uwe Rosenberg's games. And this probably Feast Road does that bit a little bit better, but this is just a bit more fun to me. So this is my 21. And that is it. That brings us down to 21, which means next time we are counting down from 20 to 11, and then we are in the top 10.
And it's interesting. I think still the most number of crossovers of games we've had in the same section is 2.
Yeah, which is crazy because we play 99% of our games together. We're playing all the same games the same number of times. So I'm surprised at how much variance we have had this year.
In comparison to last year, for sure. So thank you so much for watching. Please comment, like, subscribe. All of that helps us out. And hopefully we'll see you for the next one.